A bunch of pretentious twits surrounding a pretentious meal. Just what I need right after the holiday season. An Exquisite Meal is brought to us by director Robert Bruce Carter and stars Mike Jimerson and Armida Dhaliwal, a sharply satirical, genre-bending journey through one terrifying dinner party in modern America. So An Exquisite Meal was an odd movie. On one hand, it was a really funny satire of modern America. On the other hand, it was a bit of a mess. It really depends on how you look at this thing, because it is purposely made that way. We ultimately have this group of people that come together for an exquisite meal. Dave and Irene, played by Jimerson and Dhaliwal, are the hosts of this party. Dave has recently taken up cooking, and he fancies himself a chef now. So he's gathered together some friends and some other people so that he can show off his new cooking skills with his exquisite meal. Now, the majority of this movie is just this collection of characters sitting around talking about superficial bullshit and trying to one-up each other. And that may not sound like it's a good time, but this script has some extremely biting dialogue. Now, every character in this movie is a pretentious ass. We've all known people like this. This is just a room full of pretentious asses, and they're just going back and forth with each other. Just having pointless conversations throughout the entire film that no one's listening to because they're all self-absorbed with themselves. You can tell that whenever someone is talking to one of these characters, they're just not listening. They're preparing what they're going to say next to this person to say, look at me and all the neat things I do. We have characters that say, I'm on a gluten-free diet now, so I can't eat this meal. And the significant other's like, since when? You ate bread this morning. And she's like, this morning, I didn't feel very good after I ate the bread. But even her husband acknowledges that, hey, just wait a few minutes and she'll probably be off the diet by that point. We have another character that teaches yoga to the impoverished in third world countries and thinks that she's saving the fucking world. Hell, we even have a guy with a French accent that shows up at the door asking about the dinner party and no one knows who he is. When they start talking about should they let this guy in, they're like, well, he seems like an intellectual and he's got a French accent, so yes, absolutely, this is the kind of person we want at our party. So yeah, pretentious asses across the board, and the movie knows it. Now, there is something more nefarious, it would seem, going on in the background, and your gears are constantly turning trying to figure out what that is. Not just that, but we also have another character that has shown up at this party that not many people know who he is, and we're constantly trying to figure out what's up with this guy. We can tell it's something, but we don't know what. The movie sets up a really interesting plot that has you wondering the entire time, okay, what's going on? What's the payoff? You're trying to find all these little details throughout the film to figure out what's really going on here. The problem, or genius of it all, you come to find is you're not ever gonna get those answers. And this is the part of the movie that is gonna bother a lot of people. This movie sets up a lot of things. It puts a lot of things out there into the world for you to ponder, for you to think about, for these characters to get involved in and have their really pretentious, self-absorbed thoughts about, but it never pays off depending on how you look at it all. You see, this movie is a satire. Not only is it satiring these pretentious assholes that we've all seen before in our lives, but I think it's also satiring these kinds of movies that set up all these things and they have us thinking this stuff the whole time just to cut it the fuck off and end. Yes, there is a climax to this movie. There is something that happens with the story, but it's not any of the things that you think it's gonna be. And this unorthodox form of storytelling is not gonna sit well with everybody. And me, myself, I'm not 100% sure how I felt about it. I did actually like the movie. I look back at the experience and say, I like what I saw. But I do feel a little bit unsatisfied with it all in the end, but I think that that was kind of part of the point. Watching all of these characters go back and forth and one-upping each other was a joy to watch. It was really entertaining, and this movie was written very well. This is some really sharp dialogue, and all the performances are on point as well. They're all heightened just enough. None of them are like totally over the top, but they're just up there enough for you to see the satire. However, oddly enough, I have met people in my life that act just like this. People acting this way in this movie isn't really that far flung. While the movie seems at first that it is satiring these people and their way of life and how it is very superficial, it's also giving a commentary on the audience themselves and what they expect from what they see. We have an expectation of certain things based on what we see and hear from them, and those expectations lead us to view things a certain way. When you take that away from that thing, then what are you left with? It's still the same thing, but do you still view it the way that you did? I know I'm being a little bit vague, but I don't want to ruin the movie for those of you that do want to watch it. It's one of those odd little experiences that when you first see it, you're wondering what in the hell just happened, but once you start thinking about it, you see what the movie was trying to say. And I admit, that's not gonna be for everybody, but I do think that people that are game for those kind of thought experiences are going to enjoy this story. This is definitely a niche film, but it is a film that people in that niche are really going to enjoy. The movie's also got a really tight pace. It tells its story, it says what it has to say, and then it is done. And as a result of that, this movie's pretty damn short. It's just over an hour long. But even with it being such a short film, I did enjoy this experience. Now, I don't want all my movies to be this way, but it was an interesting experience seeing this one. Guys, An Exquisite Meal was an interesting experience. It's a satirical take on a lot of themes, some of which you might not even pick up on the initial viewing. It has some sharp biting dialogue that I really enjoyed, and it sets up quite a few situations that really got me to thinking. The performances are all really fun, heightened, and enjoyable. However, this movie is just not gonna be for most people. But if you are the kind of person that's game for a more unorthodox satirical thought experiment, then An Exquisite Meal is absolutely worth streaming.
Across the street.
Curious movie, but it was a curious movie that I honestly did have a pretty good time with. It's not gonna be for most people, but if it is for you, then check out An Exquisite Meal one night. I think you're gonna have a really interesting time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of An Exquisite Meal. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits that go along with that, like these guys, and possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg C and Dragon Con. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Rockford.
Hey, I am an excellent chef. Oh. You don't go off to some fancy restaurant and order in, do you? No.
One of the funniest parts and truest parts of this movie would be the meal. For those of you that don't know, before I got into this whole YouTube thing, I was actually a professional chef. Well, am a professional chef, I guess. I guess you don't stop being a professional chef, but I did it for a living. And I gotta say that the exquisite meal that this guy is constantly spouting off and talking about that everybody's waiting for is just the type of meal that these pretentious type of fuckwads would be expecting. Funniest part of all is that all the things he says about it and the way he tries to sexy it all up, everything he says, I mean, it's not really all that great. There's nothing wrong with it by any means, but it's just not nearly as exquisite as he always goes on and on about it. Pretty sure that that was part of the satire. Or maybe that's just me, you know, being a chef and knowing that stuff. Hey, chef humor, some funny stuff. Actually, it's usually some pretty fucking dirty humor, and it's typically projected at the patrons. So just know that. Next time you go out and eat at a nice restaurant, yeah, all those people in the back, and you're like, are they talking about me? Yeah, they are. They're talking all kinds of shit about you.